G'day folks, MBS here. Look, I've picked myself up a little 40 DCOE Weber to put a kit through it. It's fairly filthy, it's corroded, linkages are crap. We'll see what we can do with it. Let's get stuck into this and strip it. It's not hard. Okay, let's get going. First thing you probably want to do is take off the fuel inlet fitting while the carburetor is still in one piece, and then we'll take the filter housing plug out and remove the fuel filter. Then we'll take the wing nut, undo the wing nut, take that off so we can get access to the emulsion tubes, main jets and air correction jets. The two big ones, and the two little fellows, they are the idle jets and air correction for the idle circuit. Then we'll just take the top off, undo all the screws. Sometimes you may have to just give that a little tap with the screwdriver end, just to tap it off, and place it aside. We'll start pulling out the accelerator pump discharge tubes. Now they've got a flat edge on them, so they only go one way so that the discharge nozzle points forward. Flip her over and we'll take off the bottom plate. And sometimes this takes a fair bit of work to get this off. You have to just about chisel it off sometimes. Now under that plate there is the accelerator pump suction one-way check valve that needs to come out. Next we'll take out this little plug, and I can see in there's a little weight, so we'll drop that out and see what comes out. A little weight and a little spring. You definitely don't want to be losing those little tiny bits. And we'll just take this plate off in the middle of the throttle shaft. Now, the accelerator pump. This one is actually seized, so I will get that out later, and after we acid dip it. Now I'll take the manual choke mechanism off. And then we'll just test it, make sure it's working okay, the little gears are turning and not binding up. Then we'll take out the mixture screws. Now these are internal mixture screws. You don't see many of these, mainly in the older carburetors where they've got an O-ring sealing it inside that cylindrical housing. Usually you'll see the mixture screws on the outside on the later model carburetors. We'll take out another couple of jets. Now obviously this one's a little bit tight, so it's I can't get him out, so we'll leave it in there and try and pull it out later after we acid dip it. Now we'll just take out a couple of more plugs that are in the bottom base of the carburetor. Now these sliders in here all to do with the manual choke, so be careful you don't damage them when you try and get them out. Be careful when you extract them. Now I'm using internal circlip pliers to remove it, but if you can't get them out with that, you'll have to force them out with a little tiny screwdriver like I am now, but be careful not to burr them. Now the auxiliary venturi should just pull straight out without much effort, although this one's proving difficult, so we'll tackle that one in a little bit. Same with the venturi itself, it should pull out with your fingers, and then you see it's got two slots in it. That's so you can use it on either side of the carburetor. Now to get the other one out, we just, as you saw, I tacked it from behind and just pushed it out. Gave it a bit of a tap with a screwdriver and it forced it out. Now we'll work on the float area. Be very, very careful here, because if you miss the pin with your punch, you may break that little tag there that the pin goes through, and pretty well you've just wrecked your top part of the carburetor, and you'll have to replace the top if you break that off. So check the weight, make sure it's not heavy or got fuel in it, and put it aside. And now we'll just take the needle or the seat part out of the needle and seat, and we are done. We'll come back to this once I've got it clean, and we'll carry on from there. Righto, time for reassembly. But before I do, I think I should cover something about cleaning up of this carburetor. Now, it goes with any carburetor, it doesn't matter what make or model. There could be plastic parts, rubber O-rings that you've still got left in the carburetor that you haven't removed for one reason or another. So you've got to watch what chemicals you use when you're cleaning these things up. Now, I used an ultrasonic bath and I used a very mild cleaning agent, and that was only for about 10 minutes at the most, so I wouldn't melt the plastic washer that's in there. And there's also some O-ring material in the ends of the shaft, and of course this has got roller bearings in it. So when you dip them in the ultrasonic bath or whatever you're doing, you've got to clean as best you can that stuff out. Now, the reason we didn't take the shaft out is because it's complex on a Weber with these bearings, and you don't want to twist the shaft as well, which is quite easy to do. And that's leading up to my point of re-lubricating the bearing, and how do you do it. So you've got to take the end bits off, the bits that are on the end here, the idle stop screw and the bracketry here. There's a special way to take this off without twisting the shaft. You just can't hold the shaft on one end, undo the 10mm nut on, or 11mm nut, whatever it is, on the other end, because you will twist the shaft. Okay, you've got to hold it right at the very end, and I'm going to show you a very close-up of how I actually took these linkages off the end, how I went about doing it without twisting the shaft. Alright, we want to undo this nut here, right, and also at the other end take the linkages off. We're going to take the idle speed screw totally out of the way, and you're going to use a pair of pliers or multi-grips and grip it like so, yeah? That way you're holding the very end of the shaft and it's not going to twist when you undo this nut, yeah? And you do the same for the other side. The nut will come off, it will be tight, it'll have a lock washer on there as well that you'll have to bend the tag on to actually get the spanner on the nut. Alright, so you must do that when you're taking nuts off a Weber or any 2-barrel carburetor that's got a long shaft. You just don't undo the nut while not being able to hold the other end, because you will twist the shaft. Right, to check, once you take this off and that screw out and you've taken this linkage off, which is now, I've pushed it on, so I'll get that off and I'll show you another test. You need to be able to hold this up to sunlight and look down the throat while the sunlight is on this side, and you should see no sunlight, okay, once you take this linkage off, alright, because the throttles will shut. If you can see sunlight through there or through one barrel and not the other, you've got a twisted shaft. So that's a simple test to see if your shaft is actually twisted. Alright, let's go on. Oh, what I did then is I used this product, heavy duty liquid lanolin. I sprayed it down into the bearing cavity there. I also on the inside, everywhere, and then here. I let it pool up. I just filled up that chamber with the liquid and let it pool up. I forgot to add that I used compressed air to blow out the lubricant as much as possible. Then I reapplied it. And then I was able to get the pliers onto the shaft and move it quite easily, yeah? there should be no binding up of that shaft. Should operate very smooth. Alright, let's get on to assembly. Oh, and I should mention that when you're putting it back together, you do it in reverse. You put your idle speed screw back in and make sure it actually opens the throttle, and then you can put your nut on and tighten it, okay, and you won't twist your shaft. Well, let's start with the easy stuff, shall we? We'll put this little spring back down in there. Whoa, hold everything. Well, this seems like a good spot to intervene. Did you pick up what I was about to do wrong? Some of you may have guessed it. Yeah, where's the ball bearing? There isn't one. I didn't pull one out, but there is one in there. All right, it fell out unbeknown to me when it was in the ultrasonic bath. I actually found that ball bearing after I finished completely assembling it, so I knew exactly where it belonged. So it was just an easy matter of one screw, throw the ball bearing in there and put it back together. However, if you have a look at this 40 DCOE compared to a 45, you'll see many differences, and I'm going to throw up a slide here now of a 45, and you can see where the suction check valve is, and you can see where the two ball bearings should go and the weights on top of them, but they just don't exist in a 40. Yeah, in the 40, as in the next photo, you'll see that they're underneath the carburetor. That one screw where I was about to put the ball bearing, and the little check valve went underneath the square plate. So yeah, just differences, and there are other differences which I'm not going to cover. If you're doing a 45 and you're using this as a guide, you just have to be aware that there are different ways and different positions where things are in this particular carby. Now this is off some sort of what was it? I got the word tip of my tongue. Alfa Romeo, that's it. So yeah, a little bit different, eh? So just please be aware of that. Your 40 DCOE might not look exactly like this. It may look more similar to a 45 DCOE, like in that first photo I put up, and I'll throw it up again here for you. So yours probably more likely looks like this photo from the top when the fuel bowl top cover is taken off. All right, so yeah, I saved you right in the comment to say you dickhead, you forgot the ball bearing, but I spotted it. Yep, thank you very much. All right, so let's carry on assembling it. Okay, let's get this ball bearing in there and the spring and the weight, and then we'll put this plug back in. We had to reuse that washer because we didn't get a new one in the kit. Now, as you know, in the 45 DCOE, you'd have two ball bearings and they'd be accessible from the top of the carburetor, as you saw in those photos. So we put the suction jet back in. Now that little jet allows fuel to refill the pump chamber when the piston goes up. The little ball in there opens up and allows fuel to fill up that pump chamber, and it's ready for the next discharge stroke. So yeah, we've just tightened up the screws in there, and now we start at the top. We'll put in a couple of these little plugs, put them back in where they belong. They're just an inspection plug. We'll screw the mixture screws in. Now we've got to make sure you get the O-rings on, and put a little bit of O-ring grease on there, and screw them in. And what I've done is turn this over so I can see if the mixture screw protrudes out into the bore, and I very slowly turn it in until I can feel it just resisting, and then I screw it out 1.5 turns each. Now we've got the pump discharge nozzles. Now there's a flat edge, so you can't put these in wrong. You put the flat edge in, you put the little aluminium washer on at the base. Once again, we didn't get one in the kit, so we had to reuse the old aluminium washers, and you'll have O-rings underneath those plugs, and we just screw them back in. Then we move on to the idle jets and screw those little fellows in and tighten them up. And then we'll look at the emulsion tubes next. Now the emulsion tube houses the main jet at the bottom and the air correction jet at the top, where I just pointed to, and those three components can be pulled apart. Takes a little bit of strength, maybe a pair of pliers, to get that emulsion tube all apart. And now we'll put these choke pistons in with the springs on top, and then we put these little clamps in. Now they're little squeeze clamps, so you've got to squeeze them together and push them down into the body, and use a screwdriver or whatever you can to squeeze them together. You could probably get away with a pair of pointies like I'm looking at now, and just squeeze it together and then push it down into the housing. Now it's time to put the mechanism in that operates the those little choke pistons, and we're just laying it on there to have a bit of a look. Now don't forget this little gauze filter, it slides in. A lot of the time they're pretty well deformed, so you may have to flatten them out to get them back in properly. And then we'll just screw the housing in, make sure that the gears engage in with the pistons in the right spot, and just give it a quick test. Now put your fingers over the two piston tops, because when you operate that mechanism they may just pop out. Now the accelerator pump comes apart. Okay, if you want to pull it apart, it hooks into a little hook in there. And now don't forget to put that little spring clip back in there so you can actually install it in to the housing. And as you saw then, I just pushed down on it and the throttle butterflies open. So now we're just testing it. We opened up the throttle, make sure the piston fell down from that spring pressure. Now we'll put in these couple of other jets that belong to the starter system, and finally finish off with this little plate. Now I lost one of those screws. I have found it. It was sitting on the garage floor when I was air drying. Now the Venturis, easy enough. You can see there's two slots in them. They'll go on either side. You just line up the pin with those channels and they just drop straight in. And the same story with the auxiliary Venturis, drop them in, and you can't go wrong with that little bit. Okay, needle and seat time. Look, I didn't have to put the gasket on now. I could have put it on later, but never mind. We'll just screw this seat in, and we just nip it up, make sure it's not going to move, and it compresses the aluminium gasket. Now on this float, where I'm pointing to now is where the actual needle touches, and that's the bit we need to bend to get the correct level. This other tag is the drop, so that when you hold the carby normal orientation, that drops down against the seat and controls how low the float goes when it's empty of fuel. Alright, now you also have to make sure that where the needle touches that little tang, that it's not worn out. And another thing you have to watch out for is the specification that you're going to set the float level at. Alright, they vary. They really do vary quite a bit. Some say gasket on, some say gasket off. But we set this with gasket on. Now I'm going to bend the float because the float level was just too low. So we're going to bend that little tag, and make sure you bend it nice and square, and you don't distort the float, because if one float side is lower than the other, you won't have a consistent float reading. So as you saw there, how I put the needle back onto the float, it just hangs off that pin. Now don't put the pin in through all the way through just yet until you get the float level correct, because then you'll just have to bash it back out again. So pull out an old simple little ruler, hold the float or the top vertical so that the float is just resting on the ball, and then measure the distance from the gasket to the top of the float. Alright, if it's wrong, then you have to pull it apart again. Yeah, like I am now. I need to bend it just that little bit more to get the correct float level. Right, while I'm fiddling around adjusting this float level, what did I set it to? Well, in this particular carby, that's off the Alfa Romeo, it is 8.5mm from the top of the float to the gasket. This is with gasket installed, and it's 15mm drop from the gasket to the top of the float when it's dropped all the way down. Very, very confusing, because I have found 3 different specs between the 40 and the 45s, and some say with gasket, some say without. So here I am just setting it up now, just checking the measurement, and I ended up with 8.5 from gasket to top of float. Okay, so make sure you get the specs right, have a bit of a look around. Don't trust the instruction sheet entirely, because this one said without gasket, but in point of actual fact it should have a gasket on there. As you saw there, I hit that in with a hammer. You could also pull that in with a pair of pliers if you wanted to. Now once we've done that, make sure you put this little aluminium cap back in there. It just clips into place, and carefully put your top back on. And then we'll just put the screws in there. Some new screws came in the kit, so I did check the length of the new screws compared to the old screws and make sure they weren't going to bottom out in the thread. And you just see me there checking it. Alright, because if you screw them in there too long, you may break the housing. So yeah, we'll speed this along and get these screws in and go from there. Okay, so let's get these fuel inlet and fuel filters in there. Now this inlet is actually the wrong size. It should have a large hole and a small hole. But as you can see, there's a big gap there, and I had to use that small washer. So hopefully that will seal for us when we give it back to the guy. And we'll put that filter in, we'll screw up this top, and we'll do it up reasonably firm. Now we haven't done the fuel inlet fitting up very tight at all, it's just nipped up. Now let's have a look at this little cap. Of course I've got to put that linkage back on still, but we'll do that later. Now this cap is missing a washer between the wing nut and the cap, and that is a one-piece unit, so you can't put a washer in there. The only way to do it is to grind the guts out of it. That's that little bevel that's been put in there, just around there. Just grind that off so you can pull that wing nut completely out. Then you'll be able to put a washer on it. So I won't go through that in the video, but if you have to replace that washer, that's how you do it. Now let's talk about the auxiliary venturis and how loose they are in there. What holds them in place is actually the air cleaner base. You can see there the protrusions that stick out. Well, they sit in the groove around the auxiliary venturi, and once you've bolted that air cleaner down, it holds it in place. And that's it, guys. That's your 40 DCOE. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that. Catch you in another video.